Hello everyone, today we're going to review polynomials and factoring, which was our unit 6. To start out with, let's add and subtract polynomials. We need to know some definitions. So polynomial is an expression with many terms. So remember that terms will be separated by either a plus sign or minus sign. When the polynomial only has one term, we call that a monomial. A binomial is when it has two terms, kind of like bicycle, and a trinomial is when it has three terms. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be adding and subtracting. So to start out with, when you're adding polynomials, all you need to do is combine like terms by adding the coefficients. So like terms have the same variable, so that's the letter, with the same exponent. Okay, and then subtracting polynomials, there's an extra step. First, you have to distribute the negative sign and then combine the like terms. So we have examples of each. So this first one, 10 plus 7x minus x squared plus negative 6x squared minus 18 plus 5x. So we are adding, see that plus sign in the middle? So all we need to do is combine like terms. So I'm going to start with anything that has to the second power. So I have negative x to the second, and then I have negative 6x to the second. Remember, this has invisible 1, so if I add those together, negative 1 plus negative 6 is negative 7x squared. Now, anything that has an x, so I have plus 7x and plus 5x. Together, that makes 12x. And then anything that's left over, the regular numbers, plus 10 and negative 18 makes negative 8. So it's that easy. Okay, our next one. I have 4m to the second power plus 8 minus 12m minus, so notice this time it's a minus sign, 3m minus m squared. So whenever it's minus, the first thing you need to do is distribute that into the parentheses. So it's kind of like multiplying by negative 1. This first one is going to stay the same, but that second one will become minus 3m, and in here, negative times a negative makes this positive m squared. And now you can combine like terms. 4m squared plus m squared, altogether that's 5. Okay, then I have negative 12m and negative 3m, so that's negative 15m. And then this is the only one I have left over. I don't need to combine it with anything. It'll just be the 8. Okay. And then this last one, it has a mix of everything, so there are plus signs and minus signs. So notice here, I have a plus sign, so I really don't need to do anything there. Another plus sign here, so that's okay. But this minus sign, anytime you have minus, needs to get distributed into the parentheses. So I'm going to rewrite the whole thing. I'm going to take off the parentheses though. Plus signs don't do anything, but the minus sign, this will become negative 6b minus 3. Okay, now let's get all of our like terms. I have 2b squared minus 6b squared. That would be negative 4b squared. Then I have positive 4b and negative 6b. Together that makes negative 2b. And then last I have plus 9 and negative 3. Together that makes plus 6. Okay, so that's adding and subtracting polynomials. Next, let's look at simplifying expressions using the distributive property. So when you're distributing, what you do is you distribute what is outside the parentheses to what is inside the parentheses using multiplication. And then you simplify your expression by combining like terms. Okay, so I have two examples of using the distributive property. So let's look down here. See how there's something on the outside? So we're going to get that entire 12D and multiply it in. So starting with the numbers, 12 times 6 is 72. But then you have D times D. You have to remember your properties of exponents here. So when you're multiplying, you just add up those exponents. 1 plus 1 is 2. So this would be D squared. Now let's distribute to the next one. 12 times negative 4 is negative 48, but I still have the D. So that's our answer. Okay, one more kind of similar to that. See that 5m squared on the outside? We want to multiply it in. So start with the numbers. 5 times 3 is 15, and then I still have m squared. And then now to the next one. 5 times 2 is positive 10, but now I have m squared times m, so that makes it turn into an m to the third power. Okay, but sometimes you're going to have to work in reverse. So finding the GCF. Remember that GCF stands for greatest common factor. So to find the greatest common factor, when you're finding that out, you find that GCF of all the terms in the polynomial, and then to rewrite the expression, write the GCF outside the parentheses, divide the polynomial by the GCF, and then write the remaining expression inside the parentheses. So I have two examples of that as well. So here I have 28x squared minus 35. So looking at 28 and 35, I know that they're both divisible by 7. So I'm going to write my 7 down here. But now I'm going to divide each of these by 7, and let's see what happens. Well, here, 28 divided by 7 is 4, and you still need to have the x squared. Then for the next one, negative 35 divided by 7 is negative 5. So that would be our expression after finding out the GCF. If you want to check your work, you can multiply it back in and see if you come back to the original. Okay, and then down here, again, we need to find our greatest common factor. I do notice that they're both negative, so it's going to be a negative number. And they're both divisible by 5. Another thing that I noticed is that they both have y, so I could also divide out the y. So let's divide both of these by negative 5y, and let's see what happens. Negative 35 divided by negative 5 is positive 7. And then here, y squared divided by y, this is the quotient property of exponents. You need to subtract. So this will just become regular y, no exponent. Okay, for the next part, I have negative 15 divided by negative 5. Negative divided by a negative makes that turn into a positive 3. And then y divided by y, they cancel each other out. So no more y. And that would be our answer after factoring out the greatest common factor. Okay, next thing is we multiplied polynomials. So in order to multiply, what you want to do is distribute each term in the first polynomial to the entire second polynomial. Once you do that, you're going to simplify your resulting expression by combining like terms. Now, there's two ways to do this. In class, I showed you, you could either use double distribution, or you can use the box method. So just so that I can show you both, I'm going to do one of each. Okay, so for this first one, let's do double distribution. So what we do is we get our first term p, and we want to multiply it to both terms that are in the other polynomial. So I'm going to write p and then times 2p minus 3. That was the second polynomial. Now I want to do the same thing with the other term. So now this plus 4, I want to multiply that to both terms here. So I'm going to write my plus 4 and then write that second binomial. Okay, now we need to multiply this out. P times 2p is 2p squared. P times negative 3 is negative 3p. Second part, 4 times 2p is 8p. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. And then last step is you should see the 2 in the middle are like terms, so you can combine them. So this becomes 2p squared plus 5p minus 12. Okay, let's look at the next one. So sometimes when you're multiplying, they might give you a word problem like this. It says the diagram shows the floor plan of a storage facility. All dimensions are given. What is the area of the facility? So you can see our picture, it's a rectangle. And we know that area is length times width. So what they want us to do is multiply those two binomials. So I would have 2x plus 1 times 4x plus 3. So this time, I want to use the box method. So it's exactly like what it sounds like. You're going to draw a box. So 2x plus 1, I'm writing that on the top, and 4x plus 3 goes down the side. So in the top square right here, we're going to multiply. What is 2x times 4x? I know that 2 times 4 is 8, and x times x would be x squared. Okay, now moving over to this side, 4x times 1 just keeps it the same, 4x. Now down here to the bottom, 2x times 3 gives me 6x, and then last square, 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, now when we write down our answer, we're going to combine like terms as we go. So 8x squared is the only one that has x to the second power. But then these two in the diagonal both have x, so I can put those together. 6 plus 4 is 10, so 10x. And then I still have my plus 3. So that would be the area of the storage facility. Okay, and then that one at the bottom, I have h to the second power plus 9h minus 1 times negative 4h plus 3. So this time it's a lot longer. We can still use the box method. It's just going to have to be a bigger box. So this time, since this first one had 3, I need to separate this into 3 columns. H squared plus 9h minus 1. The second one has 2 terms, so I need to separate this into 2 rows. Negative 4h plus 3. Okay, now we can do our multiplication. So starting in the top row, I have negative 4h times h squared. So that'll be negative 4h to the third power. Then negative 4h times 9h. Negative 4 times 9 is negative 36. H times h is h squared. Then last one, negative 4h times negative 1. Negative times a negative is going to make this positive 4h. Okay, now bottom row. 3 times h squared is 3h squared. 3 times 9h, 3 times 9 is 27h. And then last one, 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Okay, so now when I write my answer, I'm going to combine like terms. So negative 4h to the third power is the only one that has an exponent of 3. But if you look at your diagonals, I have 2 terms that have h to the second, so we can combine those. 3 minus 36 would be negative 33h to the second. Okay, the next one, the next set of diagonals go together. 27 plus 4. So that would give me 31. So plus 31h. And in that last one, minus 3. So this is my answer. Okay, and then the last thing that goes in this unit is factoring. So remember that the standard form of a trinomial looks like this. ax squared plus bx plus c. So it goes in alphabetical, a, b, c. To factor a trinomial by grouping, first you're going to multiply a times c, so the first number times the last number, and you're going to find its factors. Determine which of those factors, so when I say factors, we're going to do this here, a times c. So over here we're multiplying, and we want to know which one equals when you're adding. Then you're going to replace that b term with the two numbers that you got here, group the first two terms and the last two terms, divide out the GCF, and then write our factors. So it's easier to remember when we start working, so let's look at our first one. We have x squared minus 15x plus 54. So remember that this is an invisible one, so that would be a. Negative 15 is our b, and c is 54. So if I do that table for AC, 1 times 54 is 54. I need it to add up to b, so I'm going to need it to add up to negative 15. So let's look at our live factors. I could do 1 times 54, 2 times 27, 3 times 18. 4 is not going to work. 5 will not work either. Or I can do 6 times 9. I think those are the only factors. But also remember that I need it to equal negative 15. So if I go through the list, 1 plus 54 is 55, so that's out. 2 plus 27 is 29, so again, out. 3 plus 18 is 21, out. 6 plus 9 is 15. So that one's close, but I need it to be negative. So what if I did negative 6 times negative 9? That would still equal positive 54, but when I add them up, that gives me negative 15. So those are the two numbers that I want. So now when I factor, here's what I'm going to do. I'll still have my x squared, but instead of writing negative 15 in the middle, I'm going to write negative 6x, negative 9x, using those two numbers, and then still have plus 54 at the end. Okay, we separate this right down the middle. So on that first side, the only thing that they have in common is x. So I'm going to divide by x and write that on the outside. And I'll be left with x minus 6. Okay, on the other side, they don't have x's in common, but I know I can divide both of them by 9. And more specifically, a negative 9, because this first one was negative. So when I do that, I'm going to write my negative 9 here. This would come out to x, and then 54 divided by negative 9 is negative 6. Once you do this, you should notice that what's in the parentheses is the same for both of them. So x minus 6 is one of my factors, and then anything on the outside is the other factor, x minus 9. So that is that quadratic equation written in factored form. Okay, let's try another one. So now I have 6g plus 13g plus 5. We're going to start off by multiplying a times c. So for us, 6 times 5. Remember, a, b, c. So that gives us 30. So what are the factors of 30? I could do 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 4 will not work, or I can do 5 times 6. Now this time I need it to add up to b, which is 13. When I add these first two, that's 31. That's not going to work. This is 17. this is 13, so that's the one. 5 plus 6 is 11, so that's not it. So 3 and 10 are the two numbers that I'm going to use to replace that 13g. So 6g squared, that's still the same. But in the middle, now I'm going to put plus 3g plus 10g. And then that plus 5 is still going to be the same. Let's split this right down the middle. So on this first side, they both have g's, so I'm going to divide by that. But also 6 and 3 are both divisible by 3. So 3g on the outside. Let's do our dividing. 6 divided by 3 is 2g. And over here, 3 divided by 3 is 1. Okay, on the right side, 10 and 5 are both divisible by 5. And that's a positive 5. So we're going to write plus 5. 10 divided by 5 is 2g. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So see how what's inside the parentheses is the same for both of them? So that's our first factor, 2g plus 1. And then anything on the outside is the other factor, 3g plus 5. Okay, and then one last problem for us. 25x squared minus 4. So this one's a little bit different. Remember that standard form has a in front of the x squared, and then the regular number is c. This one doesn't have a b. So that means that you're still going to do your tree. So a times c is negative 100. But since there is no b, it needs to add up to 0. So factors of 100, 1 times 100, and this is negative, so I'm going to do negative here. 2 times negative 50. 3 doesn't work. 4 times negative 25. 5 times negative 20. 10 times negative 10. So when you add them up, this is negative 99, way off. Negative 47, nope. Negative 21, nope. Negative 15, nope. 10 minus 10, there's your 0. So we're going to use those two numbers here. So I still have 25x squared, but in place of b, which would have been right here in the middle, we're going to write plus 10x minus 10x, and then we still have our minus 4. Split this down the middle. So on the left side, they both have x's, but 25 and 10 are both divisible by 5. So that gives me 5x on the outside. Here I'm going to divide. 25 divided by 5 is 5. This will be x. Then 10 divided by 5 is 2. Now on the right side, negative 10 and negative 4, I can divide by a negative number. Specifically, they're both even, so negative 2. Negative 10 divided by negative 2 is positive 5x. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2. So again, notice how what's inside the parentheses is the same for both of them. So 5x plus 2. And then everything that's on the outside is the other factor, 5x minus 2.